right, there's a bunch of people coming in. I'm going to wait just 1 second, and then we will jump into this quarter's waves of change. We've got some really interesting research that we just fielded, and I'd love to talk to you guys about succession planning. We're going to talk about that a little later in the process, but I guess let's jump in. So we're going to talk today about 4 different things. We did a study with consumers of people that were remote workers that moved during COVID to find out what's happening with them. Are they staying? Are they going? Are they coming back? Are they moving around? Are they happy? And so we're going to give you the answers on those in a minute. Secondly, we did a broker technology study that we would love to share some of the implications for associations and MLSs that we learned from that. Third, we're going to have a special guest. Michael Nash is going to come in and talk to us about Chat GPT, the topic of the hour. We just actually did a study on it, and we've got some really interesting, exciting ideas for you guys to try. So we want to talk about that. And then fourth, we're going to talk about succession planning. So let me jump right in. So for those that don't know me, I'm the founding partner of WAV Group, and also the president of RE Technology, which is a site that helps people learn how to use technology effectively. In my other life, I'm the vice chair of the National Small Business Association, which is the only nonpartisan oldest advocacy organization for small businesses across the country. So we do all kinds of neat things to help every one of our businesses, because frankly, most of us in real estate would be considered small. You know, I do all kinds of things with research and pushing people to change and strategies and things like that. Prior to being in the industry, I was actually the head of marketing and product development and strategic planning for Fisher-Price. So some of you probably know that brand. I also ran a web camera software company and proud graduate of Cornell University. So with that, I'm going to jump in and talk to you about a bunch of things. So we've got 2 different research studies that I want to share with you today. The first is this work from home migration study. And we talked to 500 consumers around the country, all of which had moved from 2020 to 2022, and all of which had worked remotely. So it's a very specific audience of those people that, you know, we hear a lot about in the, you know, how people, especially being from California, we hear a lot about how everybody's leaving California. I'm in Florida many times, and we're hearing people are coming into Florida, right? But there's a lot of that migration happening. So we wanted to look at that. So first, we just asked people, you know, did you start working remotely? And now where are you? So yes, 40% of them are still remote, 29 are back, and 31 are in a hybrid situation. We did this study specifically in our industry, and we found that about 2/3 of the organized real estate is in a hybrid situation at the moment, not nearly as many remote as what this would suggest. How far away did you move? I thought this was interesting. I think there was a perception, and again, I think I'm actually driven by California, that people were moving out of the state. While some certainly were, a lot of people were just moving around their same city or their same county. They might have been moving from being in the city out to the suburbs, but you'll see that even that wasn't as dramatic, I think, as what the press would like us to think. So we asked them, where did you move from? And then where did you move to? So the blue is where they were and the red is where they went. Okay. So you can see that large cities lost some, but I don't think nearly as much as what the media would suggest. It sounded like there was a mass exodus from cities, and that's actually not true. Suburbs grew, rural and country grew, and those were the people that said, I need more land, I need a better lifestyle, I want my kids out of the city, those kinds of things, right? But you can see it wasn't a dramatic shift about where they moved. In fact, when we asked them, where did you move from and where did you move to? The people that were in large cities still, for the most part, stayed in large cities, right? People in medium to small did that. And some of the large cities went to smaller cities and more affordable cities. That makes sense, right? Suburbs, they stayed. Small town, some of them moved a little bit into the burbs or even further out, but not dramatically differently. So again, I think this perception is that, you know, all these quote city slickers, right, moved out and started farming. I was laughing yesterday about Green Acres. I mean, for those that are old enough to remember that show, remember the city people moved out. I don't think that's nearly as dramatic as what we're seeing here. That's not really what happened. So why did you move? Better lifestyle, closer to family, cheaper home prices. So homes, we definitely had an influence on what people were doing. And then again, some were looking for more land or room or just to spread out a little bit. And then it falls off pretty significantly from there. And just over about half of them purchased a home when they moved. I thought that was an interesting number. I would have thought it would have been higher than that, but I guess understanding the inventory situation and, you know, how quickly mortgage rates were rising and things like that, maybe that slowed people down. But it's interesting to see the patterns of those that purchased a home versus those that did not. We're going to show you some differences on those in a minute. Now, this was interesting. 77% are either extremely or moderately happy with their new location. So when we started this, we had this hypothesis that there may have been sort of a boomerang effect, right? That people moved from a big city, moved to a smaller place and said, oh, wait, there's a reason I was in a big city. I want to go back, right? So there is definitely some of that, but not nearly as much as I think we would have suggested. But for those that are not completely comfortable, why do they want to go back? They miss their friends, they miss their home. So this is kind of that boomerang group, but it's a lot smaller than I would have guessed, right? We would have thought it would have been in 15, 20, 25% potentially, but it's not. So for those areas where people have moved in and have bought homes, I think it's really good news. For those that, that they moved out of, probably not so much. They're probably not going back. In fact, 75% of them said they're staying in their new location. Some people, a small group, said they would like to go back, but they cannot. That's probably because home prices got too high for them. I don't know. And just 15% are considering moving back. So the migration looks like it's going to stick, at least right now. I mean, a few years from now, maybe we'll see a change, but right now it looks like they're going to stay. So I thought it's very interesting data. So we asked people that were remote workers that moved out of state. So that's kind of that, what I would call the California phenomenon, right? There's a lot of people that moved out because of affordability and maybe lifestyle, things like that. But those folks that moved out, 68% of them are planning to stay. So they've gotten settled into their new state, whether that be because of the tax situation, the schools, the job they found, the remoteness. The remoteness is letting people live where they want to live. And we as an industry are not nearly as remote friendly as other industries are. So that's something for us to think about too. That's a different conversation, but it is something important to think about. Those that are still working remotely and that bought their home, there's 76% of them are planning to stay because now they've settled in, right? They've got their bedroom office, or their backyard or wherever it is that they work. So they're not going back. I think it's very interesting. Now this was interesting. So for that small percentage, that 4% that do want to move back, the bulk of them had not bought, right? So they were in that 50% that said that they had not bought. So they didn't really settle in maybe as much as those that did purchase, right? And they're the reason, they're the ones that I miss my friends, my home, my city, and I'm likely to probably go back. So for those that have committed to home purchase, they're probably more set. For those that are still renting, we may see more, migration back or more of a boomerang effect. And those who bought a home when they moved, 82% of them are planning on staying. So again, it's sticking. It's not like this was a kind of a fun experiment and they're going back home. They found a new home. So interesting, depending on where you are in the country, if you've seen people moving in, you're probably going to really benefit from that for the long haul. Okay, so, and if anybody has any questions, by the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. Let me check real quick and see if anybody's asked anything about that study. Don't see anybody, okay, but feel free to throw something in there and I'm happy to answer questions for you. So we also fielded a study on broker technology. This is as some of you know, WAV Group works with brokerages, with brokerage networks, with broker-owned MLSs, as well as with associations and MLSs. So we like to stay close as to what's going on the broker side of the house as well. And of course, it helps us on the association MLS side to know what they're thinking and how we can support them, right? So there were 3 major frustrations that came out of this, some of which associations and MLSs can help with, some maybe not so much. So the first is definitely one we can help with, which is the failure to integrate between tools like lead gen, CRM solutions, and to make it easy to populate those with MLS data. As we know, our industry still is pretty fractured, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how we haven't still gotten there with RESO and especially with the web API. The more that we enable interoperability through APIs, the better off everybody is, and especially if you're looking at our broker customers, right? The second one is a lack of innovation and upgrades delivered. And again, part of that is driven by the fact that there's old systems out there, but they're not built on web APIs, which are a lot easier to upgrade and to integrate new information and integrate new features into. So by us supporting the idea of standardization of the way data is displayed and is transported, we're helping all of the different issues. Now, the third one is one that everybody suffers from, associations and MLSs too, the lack of ability to get agents to embrace and fully leverage technology, right? So that's, we're going to dedicate one of our Waves of Change, and we may even do a full webinar on that, because that is a topic that there is not a group that works with agents that they don't struggle and suffer from that at some point. And one of my premises about that is that some of it is our fault, because we speak more about the what and the how as opposed to the why, right? So we'll tell someone, well, you push this button to make this happen and push that button to make this happen, but we don't tell them why you should learn how to push the button in the first place, right? And we don't necessarily tie the way we talk about technology to sales success, right? So when we look at a list of technologies in most MLSs, it has just their names. It doesn't even, some of them tell you what it does, like in a general sense, but we don't really train specifically to, here's the 3 ways. If you need more lead gen, here's how we can help you. If you have lead cultivation issues, here's how we can help you, right? We don't necessarily connect the dots. So we're going to talk more about that in another session, but those are the 3 major takeaways. So integration and, again, RESO adoption is something that we all can help with. There's of course, brokers offer a lot of different technologies. These are the top 5, probably not surprising to anybody on the call. Social media and email marketing are a big deal. And then there's a whole bunch of other things, as you can see. So, and by the way, we're going to be publishing a study just later today on this, where you can get all of the details if you want to download this. And then we asked, what percentage of your leads and referrals come from your own company website? Not a whole lot, if you can see this, right? And so this is an area, some of you may be involved with the Broker Public Portal. Some of you may have your own powerful websites, har.com being probably the poster child for that, right? But many, many MLSs across the country, even if they haven't done aggressive promotion, haven't, spent a lot of time and energy upgrading their system, still generate a fair amount of listing exposure and lead activity. If you don't have a product called List Track, it's a free tool. I would highly recommend that you get that. But what all of those things can help us do is that when we think about the value proposition of an MLS, if we can promise ways that we can help generate business opportunities in an objective way, right, where we're not pushing a particular set of leads to a certain brokerage, it all comes in with whoever gets the listing, gets that lead. We have an opportunity, especially now where brokers are really tightening their belts, they're cutting back on their marketing programs, to demonstrate how MLSs can be great partners by more aggressively promoting all the leads that we can generate, whether that be through all of the IDX feeds that we nurture, whether that be through all the prospecting tools that are in the MLS system and public records and things like that, whether that be an actual consumer-facing website or mobile app. There's so many different things that we do, and brokers need help with that. And one of the things we learned, I think I mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. We have a program called the Customer Experience Index, and we measure a whole bunch of things. One of the questions we asked was to agents and brokers, how interested are you in your MLS expanding and upgrading the lead gen capabilities of the website that they provide? Now, if we had asked that question 10 years ago, we would have gotten the words, you could probably all say it with me, do not level the playing field, right? This past year in 2022, 70% of the agents and brokers that answered it from 23 different markets across the country said, please help us. We need help with this. We know that it's very expensive. Many of the third-party sites are not only charging us for advertising, they're now taking big chunks of our commissions. We don't want that anymore. So there's a huge opportunity for MLSs to help address what brokers are dealing with here. Interestingly, only 54% satisfaction with brokerage technology solutions. That on average, again, relative to the customer experience index we do for MLSs, is lower. So that's really interesting to find out why. They're just not quite as happy with their tools as agents and brokers that participate in the MLS are, interestingly. And now this is important. It goes back to that original point. 2/3 believe listing, transaction, and customer data do not pass easily from one technology to another. So these are kinds of things that we can help with, whether that be to, again, make MLS data pass easily, whether we aggressively promote or pursue integrations with customer relationship management software. Because if you get a lead, if you're a broker and you get a lead from many of the lead gen sources, not MLSs, they will pass that information and it will seamlessly populate into their customer relationship management systems. We could do the same kind of thing, right? So that's another way for us to be able to take credit. Some very more sophisticated brokers actually not only ingest the leads, they actually track the lead from lead to close. Those types of brokers I would guess would very much appreciate what we do, because we've seen in other studies that we've done that the leads that come in from MLSs are much more well qualified. They're people that are further down the sales funnel and much more likely to actually purchase. So we would probably fare very well in those situations. There's an opportunity for more quantitative evaluation. And this is something that we see with MLSs and associations too, that that we don't have enough sophistication yet in truly understanding not only adoption, but true engagement and regular usage of technology, right? So, and we don't even have any idea of segmentation. There may be a tool that maybe only 20% of your members use, but that 20%, it's absolutely critical for them, right? We don't have that yet either. And brokers share that same kind of thing. So there may be opportunities for us to innovate in ways to use business intelligence tools and things like that to provide better analysis and deeper analysis of each of the tools that we offer, that we may be able to share even with the way that, it would be great if we could show how our tools are used, how broker tools are used, and provide a dashboard to a broker that would have all of that. That could be really interesting to them. What are the most effective ways you found to increase awareness, usage, and engagement? So training, one-on-one training, which some MLSs do, a lot of them don't though. It's something to think about. And new agent onboarding. We of course have orientation sessions, but are there more that we could do with that? Obviously we do group training already, but there's some other things we could look at there that we could learn from what brokers see as successful as well. 62% believe their brokerage technology solutions help increase their brokerage's revenues and profitability. So that's a pretty good number, right? That would suggest that they're pretty happy with the ROI that they're getting, but still could probably be higher. And this one is very interesting too. So only 26%, or just about a quarter of them, say they rely on MLS technologies a lot to help their agents succeed. So there's lots of room here for us to talk to brokers directly, help them understand all the tools that we offer. When I talk to brokers sometimes, especially those that have been managing brokers for a long time and haven't actually actively been in the MLS system themselves, they sometimes have a very outdated perception that it's the MLS system and maybe one or two other things. They have no idea that on average, you guys are offering 7 to 10 tools. That's a lot, right? They don't necessarily know about all of those, and they don't necessarily know how they can take full advantage of them without having to spend money on their own. Again, many brokers right now are dialing back on their technology spend. So it's a great opportunity and a great time for MLSs to reach out to them and say, hey, I know that you got to tighten your belt. Let me show you how we can help you leverage all the stuff you're already paying for, so that you don't have to spend that additional money. Now this is very interesting too. So 77% are very interested in learning how to brand MLS technologies to their brokerage as an agent. So again, another example, or another opportunity for us to say, many of the tools that you guys offer have the opportunity to be branded, whether it be at the agent level, the brokerage level, some have both. And the point of all of that is to really help the brokerage wrap their arms around it and treat it as part of their overall tech stack. When we talk to brokerages today, they feel like they have their tech stack, MLSs have their tech stack, but they don't necessarily think of them as one continuum, right? And not every broker is going to want everything an MLS does. Obviously, there's some that are like, leave me alone. I got everything I need. Don't bother me. But we all have a diverse set of customers, right? There could be some people that could very much benefit where you could help them, support their profitability right now because their business is down, and get them in new habits with you. So down the road, once the market turns again, it doesn't matter. They'll just stay with you because they're comfortable with the tools. So this is another one, and this is again not for all markets. Many of you probably know how much overlap you have, or overlapping market disorder, the word David Sharon coined so many years ago. But 45% of the people we talked to, and these were all brokers, said it's somewhat or very difficult to input listings into multiple MLSs. So if you're in a market where there's 2 in one city, or there's 2 that are close to one another, or you've got pockets of overlap where brokers have to belong to more than one of these things just by the way that the geography that they're located in, we really owe it to them to simplify that problem. It's not, there's technology out there that's not expensive. There's markets that are proven it. Georgia, Atlanta's probably the poster child for this, where they have two very much, large MLSs sitting right next to one another, and they've built ways to make it super easy. You put your MLS listing in once, pushes this to both, and away you go. So if you don't know how much overlap you have, I would highly recommend that you try to find out. And if you know that you do have it, there's, again, lots of ways to address this problem. If anybody has any or questions about that, we've done work on this area. I'm happy to help you. Just reach out to me afterward, and I'll send you some ideas of ways that you can work on that. Okay, so then we asked some other questions that were more MLS association specific. Some of these are a little scary, I will admit. Probably not something that could happen tomorrow, but these are things for us to think about as we think about MLS policy and how to deepen the relationship between brokers and MLSs. So the first one was, and it's kind of interesting when you think about it, when you look at IDX policy and lots of policy, brokers and agents can be fined if they do something incorrectly, right? Because of course they're part of a larger marketplace and they must put accurate data in. But there are also, when we hear this all the time from brokers, many MLSs, not all, okay, some are amazing. Some of you that are on the call, in fact, are some of the most amazing. But there's some that just don't do what the broker asks. They don't get back to them. They don't approve things quickly. They simply have ignored some of the required rules, like including SOLs as an option in IDX and things like that, just because they don't like it. Doesn't, even though NAR has said it should be in there, they just don't do it. So brokers are saying, what if it flipped? What if there was a responsibility that, of course, agents and brokers are still responsible for their work, but what if MLSs were as well? So if there could be some kind of a way to have some recourse if they don't comply with the MLS policy and their responsibility with the MLS policy. Brokers have asked to share fees received from third-party technology companies. Some of you may have seen, there's a new program right now called RE Distribute that's talking about that. Partner InfoNet and a few others down the road have done that. So that's something to think about. 45% are interested in a nationwide broker-owned lead gen website to compete with third parties. So probably the closest example of that today is the Broker Public Portal. There's programs that Bright MLS and CR MLS are looking at and potentially creating something like this. So there's definitely interest from brokers in working together to provide business opportunities. A centralized source to license and use MLS data from multiple markets. So that's an interesting idea, right? So I can go to one place. I don't have to get approval from 10 markets. I can go to one place. I can click the 10 markets I want, and I can get approval at once. Probably the closest example of this today probably would be Trestle or MLS Grid. There are people that are doing stuff like that, but that's something important to think about. What's interesting too is when we think about multiple MLS markets, I think we tend to think of it being larger brokerages. But I'll give you an example. We work with a gentleman in Louisiana. He has 7 agents and he belongs to 4 MLSs. He just happens to live in one of those pockets where if he wants to do business, he has to go to all of them, right? So the idea of simplifying how to work with MLS data, especially for brokerages, which is most, by the way, that don't have their own tech developers, their own tech team, this is really important to them. And then there's some transparency too about MLSs and associations sharing financial information, cash reserves, things like that. There's some belief that, and I don't always agree with this, just for what it's worth, but there is perception sometimes from brokers that, MLSs make all kinds of money, associations make all kinds of money, right? Some MLSs and associations do have significant cash reserves. Some are, live to the 3 to 6 month window that NAR recommends. But the point would be, if I am a contributing member to this, I would like to see the financial situation. And maybe that's something that can be done at once a month or once a year broker meeting or something like that. Easy access to all listings in your state region to be displayed on your website. So about just about 40% want those. So the NAR statewide data share initiative, that's, not initiative, but the rules that have been put in place, those are kinds of things that make sense. I would say that the most important thing is to talk to brokers about what parts of the region that they need. It's not a one size fits all. Statewide makes sense in some cases, it doesn't in others. Some cases it's absolutely logical. Some cases it needs 3 states, some states it needs 3 counties, right? You really need to look at that individually. And then finally, the statewide lockbox reciprocal access. So, brokers say, I've got a statewide license, and sometimes they feel like lockbox access is artificially restricting their ability to move into a new market. So why can't I have access to all of those? As if I'm part of the state, I should be able to look at all of that data all in one place. So for what it's worth, some interesting stuff. All right, now this next topic is something, frankly, I think we're all even hearing so much about it recently that we're kind of getting overwhelmed, but it's just too exciting. There's too much going on. And Michael, who many of you know, was like, please, 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 please let me talk about this. He's so excited about this. So I want him to share with this because he's got some really good information for you. So Michael, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marilyn. Can you go to the next slide real quick?
Sure can.
So I'm going to focus on 3 areas. We're talking about artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about a specific example of ChatGPT, which is this hot new product out there that really is a big deal and changing so many aspects of our lives in such a short period of time. And the third one is the RESO Web API. So last week, we were meeting with a group of executives, and this is a quote that one of them said: consumers have better access to information than agents do. This is before artificial intelligence. This is before ChatGPT and all this magical stuff that I'm about to talk about. This is now in just having access to data about listings, about neighborhoods. Consumers have better access than agents do. And guess what? This is only going to make their access even greater. So this ChatGPT thing, I literally went into ChatGPT and asked this question to the non-technical person: what is ChatGPT? And I don't expect you to read this, but in essence, ChatGPT is advanced artificial intelligence that is using text to create a human-like response. Is it there to replace the human? No. But just like factories a couple centuries ago, it is there to change our lives. And that's exactly what it's going to do. ChatGPT is already changing things in our world, and not just as a consumer, because we all are consumers, but it's already changing our world within real estate itself. And I will show some examples here in a few moments. So again, staying within ChatGPT for a second, I asked it, so what could a real estate association do with this? And there's 5 key areas that it said. Customer support. You can use a product like this to provide answers to your members, to your agents, to help with the common questions. And then once you get to the point where it's a more complex issue that your member has, then they can talk to a person, which leaves your customer support staff to be able to deal with higher level issues. Second is content creation. You can use this to help write articles, social media posts, and other marketing materials that you need that, frankly, from scratch, take a lot of time to do. But if you use this to draft something up for you, then you go and edit it, and it's a whole lot faster than trying to start from scratch. And of course, continuing with this text theme, drafting emails. From newsletters to event invitations to member renewal reminders, this allows you to save time, which saves money and creates a consistency across all of your communications. Number 4, educational material. You already are experts in your area, but you can have ChatGPT create best practices based off of what you know. You can then also use it for event planning, not just for invites, but handling tasks that you need done, for drafting schedules and agendas. It is absolutely amazing and almost limitless to what this can do for you. Go ahead, Mara. So I mentioned saving time and money. It's not just about writing emails or writing blogs. Coders, startups are already saving money within just a few weeks of ChatGPT 4 being out there, because it can also write code in the language that people need it. So if you have yourself a developer or 2 or 3, your developers can use ChatGPT to get things done faster and probably with fewer errors than before. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay.
Another example, and this was announced last week, ChatGPT is creating this add-on ability, and Expedia on the same day as the announcement said, hey, you know what? We're going to use that. We're going to make it so people can use ChatGPT to create travel plans. So they don't have to do all this exploration. They can tell the AI what they're looking for, and the AI can help create plans and schedule plans. So consumers are right now already getting to the point of where they're going to start utilizing this in their everyday lives, which kind of begs the questions. If they can do this for travel, how can they do this to help a consumer find a home? And that's where it's super important for us in real estate is to think about this. If we don't make it easier for a consumer to find a home, someone else is going to for us. Go ahead,
So
Marilyn.
Ellison Click, who one of our people on the call, she said she saw the CEO of OpenAI, the one that built this, said on an episode of Dateline that it even scared him at its capabilities, which I love.
Absolutely.
And
This
then
stuff
she
is
said,
scary.
so she's jumped into this big time. We will have to have you on this next time. She's writing thank you notes, delivering news, writing property descriptions, top 10 things to do in your area, customer client poems and songs. And I could go on and on with what I've used it for. Oh yeah. And it will translate anything into different languages.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting that she mentions that, is that a very popular language app, Duolingo, has already brought in ChatGPT so you can have a conversation in, I believe it's Spanish and French so far, so that you can have a conversation with the AI to help you learn a language or why you would use one phrase or another. It really is amazing what this tool can do, and it's not been out very long.
Oh, and Trisha has a really good point. Trisha Henshin said, is there concern with plagiarism or copyright if you ask ChatGPT to write you a blog that someone else may have also asked it to do the same? So copyright's a whole issue in this whole area. If you bring up a whole can of worms on it, it's fascinating stuff.
It's a question that I don't believe there's an answer to yet, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go. One other example is, speaking of copyright, David used ChatGPT to recreate Eminem's voice and create an Eminem-like song. Now, in fairness, he didn't just use ChatGPT. He used other AIs to make this work, because there are AIs out there that can mimic someone's voice, which is kind of scary if you think about it. But these are just consumer examples of what this is already doing, and they're going to get more and more used to AI-powered products. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the key to all of this is that ChatGPT uses an API. And I know we've heard about API for several years because of the Reso Web API. But the scary thing about real estate and APIs is MLSs are not adapting it fast enough. Let's go to the next slide. According to Reso's Extinction Countdown webpage, only 200 MLSs as of the end of last week had migrated 100% of their consumer data from RETS to the Reso Web API. We cannot, as an industry, use powerful technology like ChatGPT if we're not 100% immersed in the API world. APIs is what technology professionals use to move data. This is modern technology, is using APIs, and MLSs, if you're not one of the 20, really have to push to get that 100% migrated over to the web API, because it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, for your MLS to utilize this tech if you 20% of MLSs have 100% of their data consumers migrated to web API. It's really crazy.
So
go to the next one.
Les brings up a good point. He said, fair housing's another concern with agents using AI to generate marketing remarks. I don't disagree with you, Les, but I think we could probably train it to be compliant. Because it's gonna,
Yeah.
it learns so quickly about what's in core standards, what is the rules and regs of your local MLS. I think you could get through that, but you're absolutely
Absolutely.
right. I mean, these are, it's all happening in literally in
So
real time.
fast. Yeah.
So it's, I think the point we're trying to make here is if you're not jumping into this in some way, shape or form, and at least getting comfortable or at least understanding what it is, you're going to miss out because there's going to be things that are going to blow right past you it's literally happening hour by hour. It's not even day by day. It's not even week by week. It's hour by hour right now. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's just one example that we're going to go through with using AI in the real estate space. So with permission with Recipe.ai, we're going to show you how their AI creates a listing by just using photographs. They are not the only company that does this. This is just the company that we're going to use as an example. Go ahead and go to the next one, Marilyn. Instead of doing the video, go ahead and pause it. And yeah, instead of showing you the video, in case the video didn't work, we have some screenshots that we're going to go through with you. First off, easy step. We're going to upload images. So instead of uploading one image at a time, we can upload all the images that we want. So we're going to in this one, it's uploading 50 images. And after, go ahead, Marilyn. And after you upload the images, the AI immediately starts going through and identifying what it's looking at in each of the images and breaking it down. Is it a living room? Is it a kitchen? Is it the front of the structure? And it's doing this in real time. We're not talking hours. We're not talking days. This is happening in minutes. This is a humongous time saver for agents and transaction coordinators by utilizing this AI tool. So once it has gone through and identified each of the room types, the next one, it starts identifying the features in each of the room types. This is a powerful stuff because the agent doesn't have to go through there and say, well, this is a fireplace and this is a hardwood floor and this is and this and this. And the AI is doing this faster than any human could ever do that. Let's go to the next one. And once it does that, it says, hey, so what do you want in the listing, right? What features that we've identified do you want in the listing? Select it, remove it. It's up to you as the one creating the listing. And once you have done that, this is super cool. I absolutely love this next step. It writes image descriptions for every single image that was uploaded. So this is a huge benefit, right? Besides saving time, because a human doesn't have to write each one of these, it has SEO power there, because when Google or Bing or any of these search engines goes to these images, it can help drive traffic to this listing because of the image descriptions. And the next really, really, really big one is the ADA compliance. So people use.
I stop here for 1 second, Michael, because there's a couple of things in chat. So I'm assuming that because there's concern about when someone writes a description using AI, does AI really understand fair housing and compliance and rules and regs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm assuming that Recipe has dealt with that they ingest the rules and regs of the MLS when they do this. Is that correct?
It's funny you asked that. Let's go to the next slide. I think I included on the next slide. It does that. The very next step is to go through the rules and regs of that MLS, checking the images for branding if branding is not allowed, checking for signpost. Now, does this replace the agent? And I know that's a concern. Does this replace the agent? No, right? But what this does do is save the agent time, so they don't have to do all of the describing each image exactly. The AI is doing it for you. As an agent, it is your responsibility to make sure everything is accurate, right? You don't assume AI is 100% right. You always have to proofread before you publish. And this is not just with this software here. With ChatGPT, with Bing, any of it, you have to proofread to make sure that it is accurate, because like anybody, it makes mistakes and you have to check it.
The Recipe specifically is checking image compliance.
Yep.
But like you were talking about, Allison, like there could be there's other ways to build compliance. Like these could be, AI could be added to the kinds of compliance tools you guys already use to make them even more effective, because there's false positives on those programs. If you use any of the, the IMAPs or those types of things, there's false positives on them. So this might actually help reduce some of the false positives, but like anything, it's not going to be perfect out of the gate. It's going to need to get trained.
Well, and that's the funny thing, because humans aren't perfect either.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
When we do these things, we're not
compliance.
perfect either. This just is another way of doing something faster to save us time and give us the ability to work on stuff that's more high level, more meaningful. And then the last part, at least this software, is drafting a listing description. So again, it's not that you just say, great, it drafted it, it's perfect, we're going to go with it. You have to proofread it. With this, it's a lot easier to edit something than to create something from scratch. Right? It is a lot easier to edit than to create something. So this is just one example of what is already within the industry to save agents time and money, to be able to, utilize AI. This is here. This is now. This isn't this futuristic 3 years from now. This is currently live stuff that MLSs, associations, and brokerages can utilize. Last week, WAV Group did a ChatGPT survey, and one of the questions we asked is, what are you using ChatGPT for? And there's some amazing answers of agents, brokers, association staff, MLS staff already using ChatGPT. So for software development, they're using it to help write code. Do they just copy and paste it and assume that the coding is right? No, they're editing it, they're checking it, but having to make edits is a lot faster than starting from scratch. There's a lot of people using it to generate marketing and content collateral, from blogs to email crafting, social media posts. People are already using ChatGPT to write listing descriptions. All of this stuff, people are already starting to utilize, experiment, and figure out how they. Oh, that's funny. Allison said she wrote a love song to her husband for Valentine's Day. That's amazing. It's a great example, right? You have an idea, but you don't know where to start. You go into the chat and you throw this idea down, which is the next one, right? Training idea generation for classes, right? It gives you a sounding board to go and try to develop something. And one of the answers, and I absolutely love this answer, is someone is already using OpenAI's, which is the creators of ChatGPT, using their API to automate MLS compliance related tasks. So MLSs have already started to embrace it. So is your organization going to be one of those that just kind of sits and waits and lets everybody else do this? Or is your organization going to be ones that say, let's try it, let's do this, let's see where we can go with using AI to make our lives easier?
Thank you, Michael. That was so fun. There's so much that we could go. We could have done a whole session just on ChatGPT, and I'm sure
Oh my gosh, yes.
we're probably going to continue to talk about that, and we're going to publish the results of that survey quickly, because that's what we heard this week. Could be a whole different thing next. Right? It's moving so fast.
Absolutely.
So the third component of Waves of Change that we always like to share with you guys is something about some component of best practices. And as you may know, we do a fair amount of recruiting. And I've really learned a lot of things about what I think are the best ways for us to prepare ourselves for the future from a leadership perspective that I want to share with you today. And I even gave you a little 5-step process. So if we look around, I hate to say it, I'm in this group, right? Many MLS and association leaders are, we're in the boomers, right? We're 60 and up, or close to 60 and up. Some are in their 70s, some are even in their 80s. They hang on for a long time. And that's awesome. But at some point, this group's going to have to move on, right? We can't live here forever. We do have to find our, as I call it, not retire, but redirect to another adventure. We also have what I'd call a smaller but exciting new generation of the 20s and 30 somethings coming up. There's a great group that are senior, and there's a great young, high energy group. I was just at AEI, and there's just inspiring to see lots of very smart people coming into the world. But the bottom line is there's kind of a talent gap, right? The senior people are on the aging out end, and the young and up and comers are at the younger end, but they still kind of need a little bit more seasoning, right? So that's where the idea of succession planning comes in, and it's more than just written down words. So I want to talk about this. So I kind of think of, there's like 5 components to this that are really important to be able to pass that baton. That's where the baton comes from, right? So the first component is you have to believe, right? You have to believe you truly have a successor among you. Doesn't mean they have to be ready to go tomorrow, but you believe they have the raw talent, you believe they have the potential, you believe they have the passion, you believe they have the commitment, and that they can get there, right? Doesn't mean, again, they're going to do it tomorrow, but that they can get there. They've got that. You can see the future and you can see them being a great leader. If you don't have anybody like that, and you have more than one staff person, and unfortunately some folks only have one, then that's something to think about. Is, if you really do want to create a continuity and you want to have an amazing team, you do want to hire people that you believe at some point could take on that role, right? That could be that ultimate leader. So then the second component of it is, one thing to know you have them, but the second component is to build a plan and to activate the plan, right? So some people have sort of a futuristic org chart written down, or they have it in their heads. Some people haven't even written it down, but there's kind of a de facto understanding that our COO is the next in line, or our head of technology is the next in line, or our GAD is next in line, or whatever, right? But it's not written down. But the most important thing to do is, it's not just about finding that person. It's about actually putting a proactive plan together, whether that be with training, setting development goals for them, setting accountability for them, and making it very obvious that you are grooming them, right? That you're doing some things, but that you're going to spend time and energy and frankly money on them. And you personally, as the CEO, are going to spend time with them, understanding what their hopes and dreams are, understanding what their skills are, understanding if they're off on something, why they're off on something. You're going to really spend more time on people. I just heard a really interesting statistic. So they asked about 1,000 technology company leaders how much time they spent with their people, and they sheepishly admitted it was 8%. Well, without people, we don't have amazing organizations, right? So activating that plan, again, not just saying we've got one and someday somehow it's going to happen, that you actually have a plan of attack. And with that, training is super important, right? So you're spending time with them, you're tracking what they're doing, you're giving them the attention. And importantly, the O is super important. This is where a lot of organizations are falling down right now. So internally, you may have someone that's amazing, they're amazing, and you're doing all those other things. You're grooming them, you're doing things, but you're not giving them external exposure. So the board of directors doesn't see them as an up and coming leader. The industry may not see them as an up and coming leader. They're not involved with peer groups that can help them learn how to do things better and things like that. So they're getting ready, but when it comes right down to it, I'm doing several searches. And I have done several searches where, the second in command is in line or is interested in the position, but the board of directors hasn't been convinced because they haven't seen them step up into bigger and bigger leadership roles. So it's super important that when you have an opportunity, that you let those high potential candidates, and by the way, it doesn't have to be one, it can be multiple. It's probably better if it's multiple, right? So you can hedge your bet a little bit, but make sure that they're getting in front of people in different contexts so that they have a chance to grow and that other people get to see them in that growth program. And then of course, when N happens, then hopefully you've got a new leader and you've got someone that along the way, as they continue to grow, you want to test them, right? You want to coach them, you want to inspire them, you want to push them, you want to let them know that we are here, but not necessarily manage them, right? But really let them step up and see how much they'll step up. And then ultimately, if you do your job right, then it's a seamless handoff. That baton goes to the next person and you get to go redirect and do whatever fun stuff you want to do. So this is something I would definitely spend time on. If any of you guys are struggling with this concept, I've worked now with several clients helping them do this. I would love to help you because there's nothing more important than having continuity in our business and having that next gen ready to go when it's time for everybody to redirect. And I read a really interesting article on some things I thought I wanted to share with you. And I'll be the first to raise my hand. I'm in this group, right? So what's holding us up from sort of creating an overt plan, right? The first one is very human. It's the fear of letting go. Like, what are we going to do? We have lived, slept, eat, and breathed real estate for the bulk of our careers, right? Most of us. what do we do then? What do we do next? Right. So we have to let go of that fear that, without real estate, we're not who we are. We absolutely are. And then just the reality of, and we all know there's consultants out there or people that just won't go. They keep showing up at meetings, even though they've been, quote, retired for 10 years. They're reluctant, right? They love this stuff. We love our industry. We don't want to let it go. But sometimes you got to, not necessarily leave, but let the other group stand up. So then there's some challenges too that we need to think about. One is that one of the reasons I think we have that gap is that many people that are in leadership now have been in their job 10, 15, 20, 25, some are as long as 40 years, right? So they've had that job. So there's been no need to bring someone up behind them because they're comfortable and they've been staying there. But to get successors in place, we really have to do that. But the danger sometimes is that we grew up in the era where it's a life sentence, so to speak, right? You take these jobs and you live with them forever. The next gen coming up, or the next several gens coming up, we're not trained like that. They were trained to, learn something, stay with a company 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years. 5 years is a long tenure for younger folks now, right? So how do you deal with that tenure? How do you inspire them to stay with you? Or how do we potentially trade them between organizations, right? We let them continue to grow, but they don't stay with any one of us for 20 years, because that's not necessarily what happens today. The other is workplace flexibility. There's still a lot of belief, solid, unwavering belief that people have to go to the office to be effective, even though associations and MLSs worked remotely for 3 years and they did great. In fact, they did better in some cases than they did before, right? So we are holding on, in some cases artificially, to the fact that everybody has to come in the office every day. They have to do things the way that they used to do it. And that's going to hurt us, because other industries, as I showed you earlier, 40% of people that we talk to are still remote. We're not anywhere near that in our industry. If they have the flexibility to live where they want to be, go to get their child in the school they want to be in, take care of their elderly parent, whatever their reason is for staying wherever they are, and we make them move, they won't move. I see it all the time in recruiting now. It's like, there's so many great candidates out there, but they won't move. It's like, no, I'll do it remotely. I'll do it hybridly, but I'm not moving. So that's something to really think about. If you're trying to build a world-class organization, you may need to get more flexible on that. And then there's things like delivering a sense of purpose, right? Many people, younger folks that are coming in, and frankly, we all have this at some level, right? We all want to feel like our life meant something. We were doing something that mattered to people, but it's even more important now for, I think, for the next few generations. So we've got to help them deliver a sense of purpose. And how easy is that to do when we're helping people live the American dream? I mean, to me, that's a very inspiring purpose, right? We're helping people raise their families in a place that they love and cherish, right? So I don't think it's hard to grasp that, but sometimes if we get too tactical about, oh, it's just about this job, it's not about the higher purpose of real estate in the world that it plays, that we might lose track of that. And again, tone wise, this is not a command and control generations that are coming up. They're much more excited about somebody that wants to lead them, that wants to mentor them, that wants to inspire them, that wants to give them some room to try some things. ChatGPT being one example of that, right? So when thinking about your management style or your leadership style, don't even call it management style, leadership style, does it really encourage people to blossom? Does it encourage them to bring you neat ideas? Does it encourage them or do you encourage them to try things, even if it's on a small piloted level, right? So something to think about. And then providing transparency. We have a tendency, again, older generations, and I'm not calling anybody out, I'm calling myself out, right? We were raised where it's sort of almost militaristic in the sense of sort of need to know, right? The higher up in the food chain you go, the more you get to know, the more transparency. That isn't always necessarily going to work. There may be chances to give people more flexibility to understand the impact they can make, and give them, real examples, real numbers, real metrics on, wow, you went out and did that event, and guess what? 50% of the people that are there are now using the technology demonstrated that weren't using it before, as an example, right? And then the last one is really thinking young and thinking about the next gen, right? So we have programs that work for the current leadership of our organizations. And let's remember, the average age of a realtor is 56, right? So they're on the boomer side of the house as well. But if we want to continue to nurture the long-term viability of what goes on in real estate, we have to try new things. We have to think about new things, AKA the ChatGPT kinds of things, right? Try new approaches, try new media formats, try new messaging, try involving different people. Obviously, YPN is one great example of that, right? So we can't just, there's a great picture that NAR used to use where they took an ostrich and its head's in the sand, right? We can't just say, everything's fine, we're going to keep doing the way we've always done it because it works, because that isn't necessarily what works for the next generation of leaders and the next generation of folks that are coming in, into real estate in general. So with that, again, I'd love to help anybody that has issues with this, or if you realize that maybe you've got something sort of formulated, but it's not as formalized as it could be. It's really important that the board understands why this is important and have them understand why you as the leader need to spend more attention on doing these kinds of things if they want the long-term viability of the organization to be there. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of what we've got for you today. We have 3 more sessions coming up, May 23rd, October 10th, and November 21st. We've automatically registered all of you guys for that as participants. Of course, you don't have to come to each, but we would love you to. We're going to continue to do more and more consumer research. We've heard a lot from some of our participants that they would like us to help get a better handle on what the consumer's thinking these days. So you're going to see us doing more and more of that, as well as industry stuff. And then, of course, doing best practices and sharing trends. ChatGPT is probably going to be on the agenda again, I would guess, because there's going to be somebody that's going to do some pretty neat stuff with this stuff. So with that, anybody have any questions? I'll look into the chat. Anybody have anything they'd like to ask for? KBS, will we receive the slides? Yes. We'll give you the whole deck. And we'll give you the recording of all of this so you can see it. It's very interesting. Okay, anything else that we can help you with today? All right, well, we're just at the top of the hour. Thank you all again so much for attending. And if anybody has suggestions of topics that they would like us to dig into and share, we're happy to do that. Just send them our way. Just send it to Marilyn at WAV Group or Michael at WAV Group, and we'll be sure to bring it to one of our next sessions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.